Hi everybody, on this week's video let's talk about resonator guitar intonation. So what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? We're going to look at how these things are built. We're going to see how that affects intonation. We're going to look at some examples of newer instruments and setup and how that affects intonation, some old instruments. We'll do some examples, and then at the end I've got a few solutions that might help you get the instrument perfectly in tune, good enough. So let's get started. So just let's put some context to this. I see a lot of people on Facebook pages and forums, often people at the start of their resonator journey, asking about compensated saddles, or are there any ways to improve the mechanics of a resonator guitar. I too used to have those same worries, and I don't now, and hopefully this video might allay some fears or give you the ideas about, what the solutions are. So a resonator guitar by its nature is a very simple thing. I'm sure you probably know that there are kind of three main kinds. There are tricones, there are single cones, and there are Dobros spider bridge types. And what I'm going to say today, I think, relates to all. I happen to have lots of these the single cone biscuit bridges. I have one tricone which we'll look at later. But they're very simple. Basically, in this instance, there's a wooden disc, and then there's a slot cut in it, and there's just a little piece of wood, very thin, often boxwood, very cheap, simple wood. Some people use maple, but very thin piece of wood that goes straight in with no form of compensation or adjustment for the strings. And when somebody sets up a guitar like this, you can turn the cone, which in turn just slightly adjusts that straight bar bridge, and you just try and set the intonation at the 12th fret to be as close as possible. And generally that works pretty well, and you know what? There might be some micro adjustments needed on strings. But what you can see there is that that's traditionally how these guitars were built. And what you can sort of understand is that that is the sound of these guitars. As soon as you start trying to change the bridge, you can very quickly, I would say, destroy the guitar's kind of tone and character. So let us now look at a few examples of these, and I'll demonstrate what I'm talking about. So first of all, here is my National Resophonic Style O Deluxe from 2004, my main gigging instrument. I must have done, goodness gracious, well over 1,000 gigs on this. A lovely guitar. Now, when I got this guitar, it was, it played okay, it was good, it was perfectly fine. I took it to Steve Evans, who has a company called Beltona Instruments, and he's a builder and a resonator expert and a thoroughly fantastic person. And he did a setup on this, and what was astonishing was when it came back, the action was lower, the guitar got louder, and the intonation on it was pretty damn good and better than it was before. So what I'm going to show you is I've got a tuner here. And what I want to show you just is an example here really of, I'm just going to do this on the E strings to give you an example. Right. So because here in England today, it's the end of May, and it's actually really cold and wet, the wettest May on record. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure I'm in tune right now. Okay, so according to my clip-on tuner, I'm perfect. So there are different ways of checking intonation. Some people do a harmonic, and that's basically set perfectly. Yeah. So that's basically flagging the same as the open string, the harmonic. Now I think that makes sense in some ways, but when you play, you fret the instrument. When you put capos on, the instrument goes, the action changes. So therefore the intonation changes. So let's just have a little look now by fretting. Stay still. So that's Yeah, that's good. Well, I can hear that sharp, and it just pops up. And it pops up about. It wasn't quite 5% sharp. Yeah, probably 1 or 2% sharp. Perfect. So basically, what we're showing there by fretting this is that this instrument. Let's just check the other strings now. Yeah. Yep. You could hear that was slightly flat, that G. Yeah, that's a. It's hit bang on, and then occasionally it's come in ever so slightly down. B's are normally the hard one. Perfect. It's fluttering between being maybe 2% sharp. Okay, so that is the most boring bit of video on YouTube. But what you've just seen is me with a new National Resonator. Check it in real time that it's perfectly in tune, open, and then basically when we go to the 12th fret and fret the notes, they're basically in tune. Very, very good. Probably equal to some of my other instruments that have got, you know, the ability to do fine tuning. My Stratocaster's set up beautifully. I would say it's probably on par. Now that seems quite weird, doesn't it, for you know, one of these biscuit bridges with a plain, uncompensated saddle. Let's talk about why that might be the case. So because Steve set this instrument up, and because he is an expert, he was able to, you know, look at things like cutting the nut slots, and also cutting the bridge slots, and also he did a fret job, and the action on this instrument is relatively low. If you can imagine, it sort of stands to reason that if you have a high action, and then say you press the string down at a point here, the actual angle is still quite steep. You're stretching the string, so you're probably going to turn it sharp. So a good setup, first of all, even on the basic biscuit, can make all the difference. If the action's low, the strings are stretched in nicely, if the frets are all in good condition, you can do a little bit of compensation just about how you cut the nut slot and even the bridge slot on the very thin saddle. You can straight away just dial it in to be pretty good, and I think this is a very good example of that. So straight away there, I hope that example of a new instrument which has had some, you know, good money spent on by a good guy that can make, you know, a brilliant difference. What I'm going to do now is do a similar thing with this vintage one. Now this is a 1931 Triolian, and a fantastic and well-loved guitar. So I'm just checking the tune. I did tune before setting the camera up, but as I say, it's actually really cold out, even though it's the 25th of May 2021, and I've still got the heating coming on. The heating's just come on. Right. Well, that doesn't sound in tune. So again, sorry for being boring, but together we're going to discover this. To be honest, I'm figuring this out as I'm going along to a degree anyway. I mean, I know this stuff. I've never actually consolidated it and shared it in one place, so I do hope this helps. Okay, so this guitar is an old guitar. Now I know the neck on this is a little bit of a twist to it, like old Nationals can do. It's got a nice action. This was, I bought this about 3 or 4 years ago, and I know it was worked on 2 or 3 or 4 years before I bought it off the chap. So this is probably 8, 9 years into having had a neck set. I mean, that's basically perfect. Let's just try the low E. Right, that's quite sharp. So that's about 8% sharp, according to the tuner, which is quite a big jump, isn't it? So the A, yeah, it's probably 2 or 3% sharp. The D goes perfect, but it flutters just slightly over. So what we're seeing is obviously the guitar generally is sharper on the low end. Now I could probably just twist this back, if you imagine. That's an extreme version. I could probably just twist this back, you know, and I could win it back. G. Yeah, perfect. That sounds wrong, but it's showing right on the tuner. Yeah, it's slightly sharp as the B. Yeah, there we go. So, what we see there is there's a slight amount of sharpness, but basically, if I play the key of A, what you can hear there is really a point I've got on my notes here, and it's a point I think is really important. What is good enough? Now, if you're one of those slapping, tapping kind of, you know, clever people on guitar, you'll be looking for perfection. You might be looking at those fanned and unusual fret systems, you know, and all that kind of stuff. If you're playing, you know, these instruments for sort of what a lot of people play these for, which could either be very nice, folky, rootsy, Americana-y kind of, you know, stuff, or, you know, this kind of very bluesy kind of stuff. What I think you should find is that even an instrument that is ever so slightly out like this, you make it work. One of the astonishing things I've heard more as I've gotten older is, as I listen back to old recordings and Blind Boy Fuller and stuff, sometimes the guitars aren't even really in tune. You can hear that one of the strings is slightly out, and I'd never noticed it as a youth. I just loved the music, but you start to hear it now, and if some of those classic recordings that are incredibly moving can still be such because the soul of the music is there, then that kind of, and the guitar is technically out of tune, the intonation's technically out on it because it's a fact, you know, out of the factory sometimes these things didn't come out so well. That's okay. I would say that this one's been set up, and whoever did this work down in the east of England, for the guy that I bought the guitar of, he's dialed in pretty well for an old instrument. I think that's pretty astonishing. So we're showing there that it's possible to get these things dialed in pretty okay. Now there are some more better compensated solutions I would like to share with you in a second, but we'll just keep going forward. This is already taking longer than I expected, but I feel like I'm just talking honestly and sharing, you know, what's important. Also, the algorithm for YouTube videos is better if you go over 10 minutes. They let more people see it. So there we go. So I've just put the capo on at fret 5. And we should be able to hear that that chord sounds pretty well in tune. Now if you had perfect pitch, I've known two people that have perfect pitch. And we've played this game and they said, when you play that chord, does that sound in tune to you? And I'd be like, yeah, sounds fine. They're like, I hear dissonance and stuff like competing and clashing. Again, it comes down to who you are and how good your ears are. Of course, I believe you can't learn perfect pitch. You can learn absolute pitch, which is very similar. I hear that has been in tune, and certainly within the within the realms of fretted instruments and rock and roll and blues music. As being perfectly fine and doable. Now, as we go up the neck, there is a song. I don't do it in the set anymore, but I did used to do a Carter Family song, which I'm trying don't think, actually, do you know what? Now I'm doing this, I might be on my old Martin. I think on the Martin I used to use a 12 fret. You can sort of hear that's not quite right. Let's just go there. So I'm actually playing the G off of the fret 10. Now you can hear that's basically in tune. The low string is slightly sharp. So here's a little tip for you, one of the first tips. I used to, many years ago, you'd be capoing and doing stuff, and sometimes the tuning would, you'd be retuning almost for every song as you change the capo on other old guitars of mine. What I found was a couple of things. First of all, good capo technique makes sense. What you should try and do with your capo is, if you put it too close to the fret or too far away, that can have an adverse effect on how you do the capo. Also, what I also found is if you do the capo, so you're basically angling, again that's an extreme version of it, but if you aim this part of the capo on the high strings down towards the fret and then away, what you end up with is, because the lower strings are thicker, they get stretched more over the fret. So if you just angle the capo right, it becomes a knack. You get more of an in-tune sound, and I've tested this with capo before. I mean, I get tune. I won't bore you with it now, but yeah, you can get more of an in-tuneness just by good capo technique. Maybe you just get that low note in, and then micro tweak, and then you're good to go. It's again perfectly good enough on stage. If you're in a recording studio, you'd probably want to tune between each take, and make sure it's dialed in as well as possible, and make sure it's in tune relative to the key that you're playing in. So before we talk solutions, if you're finding this video helpful, we love making these videos for you, but do help us in return. So the best thing you can do is subscribe, and you can do this by going down and clicking the subscribe button, press the bell icon. You can set fire with napalm to the like button, and that is wonderful for us. And in the description you'll find links to all our social media. You can buy us a coffee. The best thing you can do is you can join our mailing list, and we'll tell you when we're gigging and when we've got records coming out. So I've got a list of solutions here. So the first thing I've said is setup. Well, we've talked about that lots, so we shouldn't really need to go into it in much more detail. I think what I've demonstrated with say this guitar is that a lower setup by a competent resonator expert can make a lot of difference. I'm just going to talk about one slight difference. So I have this guitar set up for doing standard tuning stuff, and on stage with the washboard resonator I use this guitar for standard, anything standard tune, and my tricone is in open G or open D. So this one's set up differently. Let's look at that. So here's my tricone. This too was set up by Steve Evans at Beltona Instruments, and I'm very lucky. He's a world expert. He lives 20 minutes away in Birstall. I'm in Leeds, but he's up there. But yeah, basically what he did was he set up a very, I don't know how he did it. It's very clever, but he asked me what I wanted. He said, do you capo? Yeah, you mix bottleneck and finger style in these tunings. I said, yeah. He said, right, I know what to do. And what he's done is set it up so up to about fret 5, the action is really quite low. And then as you get beyond there, the action gets higher. So I believe the idea is meant to be that you can, in normal tunings, like open, so this is a D, open D. You can sort of play, but the idea is meant to be that if you then say capo, it's should be quite nice. So you might have seen there that I was just adjusting the angle of the capo. I do this on stage, and I do it now without thinking really, but I put the capo on, and I might just have a little strum on the guitar. Maybe could do with a touch more tightness. You might just sometimes, I check the tuning, and I might just move the capo so it does that a little bit. And I can hear that the lower note goes more in tune. Now I can hear that's technically slightly out, but on a stage you don't want to mess about, you don't want to spoil an audience's evening, you want to keep them dancing, having fun. Then you can just get on with, get on with things. It's, I think, good enough. So we've looked at setup. I think it's the biggest thing you can do. The next thing is to talk about compensation. You can actually compensate these things. I've seen people do it. I know some people don't recommend it. As you probably can tell, I am fine with these kind of factory spec traditional bridges for the reasons I've suggested. But I have seen people do something where they take this normal, very thin piece of wood on the bridge, and I need to probably give you an example of this. Okay, here we go. Here's probably a way to do it. Very technical. I have a Max Miller book with his very nice Duolian, and I have an Echo harmonica that I got from a Goodwill in Nashville in 2006. Now, let's just say that this is the bridge saddle, and it's sat that way. I've seen people take a thin piece of the same wood, stick it and laminate it to the back, or the front, and that then gives you enough space on that top edge to be able to dial in a perfect compensated note, just like you might see on any other guitar. So the last suggestion I've got for you is there's a very new product out. As I film this, it's only been out for maybe a couple of years. National Resophonic, who made this guitar, who I love, they produced a biscuit system called the Resolution Biscuit, and it's $260. And what it is instead of having the wood biscuit, it's a metal, I think aluminium biscuit, and the biscuit, the slot where the bridge goes into the biscuit is open, and the set comes with lots of different bridges made out of different materials which are compensated, and you can just put in the different ones to change the sound. And I have never tried one of these. I've heard conflicting ideas about them from certain people. I've not seen one or played one, so I couldn't possibly comment. There is a Steve James video where he compares one, and it helps give an idea of how the product works and what it's all about, and I'd recommend people check that. But what that shows is that you can buy a product off the shelf which comes compensated and adjustable with different woods and goes straight on with one screw. And if it is something where you feel you're not getting the result that you want from the traditional system, perhaps you can buy that, and that might give you the results that you need. So there we go. I think, it's a really dry subject, but it's one of these things where probably once or twice a month I see this come up on the internet, and then I see the same people giving advice. And so a lot of these videos we've been making over lockdown and coronavirus as the Washboard Resonators really are tackling subjects that you see go round and round and round. And what I'm hoping is that, first of all, if somebody asks me, I don't have to type it out again. I can just say, watch the video. But I genuinely hope that as the years roll by, people that love these instruments, anything like as much as I do and all my friends do, I hope that our channel is a resource to, learn about these things and save a load of time, because I've had to piece loads of stuff together, and I'm still piecing stuff together every week by talking to different people. And so what I'm hoping to do is just to share it on and make the world a more shiny, resonating, better place. So thank you everybody, and do like and subscribe. Do also leave a comment and tell us which biscuit systems, intonation ideas. There'll be stuff I've missed as always. So tell us what works for you. Help those people out. But in the meantime, thank you very much and goodbye. That was loud.